All right, so Miss Mims has a motion for a new theme song for Raytown. Old Town Road.
Yes.
All right. Let's go ahead and call this February 4th Finance Committee meeting to order at 6:11 p.m. Instead of going through roll call, just like to document, obviously, we get us going, that Alderman, we got a quorum, Hunt, Green, Mims is here. So first off, I'd like to take a motion to approve of the prior meetings minutes. I would entertain such.
I would like to announce that the minute be approved.
All right, so we have a first from Alderman Hunt, second from Alderman Mims. We can vote by aye. Mims.
Aye.
Frank Hunt, I guess I should have you first, right? So
Yes,
Frank,
aye.
Mims, aye, myself. So unanimous approval of the prior meetings minutes. So let's go ahead and go on to discussion items here. General discussion of proposed changes to the city's purchasing policy. This was presented, Mr. Russ Petrie, you emailed me to give me some information about this a while back ago, so the floor is yours, sir, on what's going on.
Okay. Well, what you have before you is a whole packet. It has the purchasing policy as well as the budget policy. And in front of each one, and I did double-sided to save some paper, but if you flip the front page over behind the agenda, you'll see a summary page of the changes that are in the purchasing policy that you have before you. As things progress and prices go up, it becomes apparent that many times that we hit the ceilings that are set on the approval limits. So on page 21, there is a new matrix that is in this policy. And the reason that there's a matrix is to clearly identify which person has what authority to sign off on and what amount. And also at the top of that matrix on page 21, there are two items, and one shows what does not require a bid for the city and what does, and what limit constitutes that. So there are exceptions within the budget policy. Those really have not changed. So that is the big change that is on this policy. There are some other changes that are on here that are wording changes that make the policy flow a little better and work a little better. On section 1.8, you will see that there is a requirement of an affidavit as a conflict of interest, and that has been changed to require a statement, a written statement from any accepted bidder that there is no conflict of interest. So the conflict of interest statement has not changed. It's just the format that is accepted. On section 2.1, there's a bullet point number 2, the limit of $2,500 or 5% of any item exceeding the budgeted amount. The dollar amount of $2,500 is staying the same, but the suggested raise is 10% instead of 5%. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later when we discuss the budget, the approval limits, because that really constitutes about $5,000 before it has to go to the Board of Aldermen. So in section 2.2, bullet 3, the wording is changed to remove the words alert to system. This is an exception that does not require a bid, and it's for the police radios, the emergency public safety radios. And it uses the word alert to, and that is a branded name. And we have found that those brands change, and so to stay consistent, we're changing the words to say radio connection fees instead. So that is the change there. And in section 3.6, the wording is changed from the city administrator's weekly report to the city administrator's regular report to the Board of Aldermen. And because things change over time and this policy has not been revised for some time, Schedules change and things like that, and instead of putting a weekly time limit on that, that's worded elsewhere. So it doesn't need to be redundant here, so I just changed it to a regular report. So if you go on to page number 21, as I mentioned before, the first two items are what constitutes to have a bid. Any purchase between $3,000 and $15,000 requires an informal bid process. This has not changed from previous. It's just clarifying in a matrix so that we have it in one place. The formal bid process is any purchase that's over $15,000, with the exceptions in Section 2 that are listed. This item has not changed. It's just here for clarification purposes. Below that, you'll see the department head approval limit, the finance director approval limit, and the city administrator approval limit. The department head approval limit is currently $3,000. It's suggested that be moved to $5,000 on this. The finance director approval limit is currently anything over $3,000 to $10,000, and it's being suggested to raise from $5,000 to $15,000. And the city administrator approval limit for non-budgeted purposes are $30,000, and the budgeted purchases under $50,000. And that anything over those limits would go to the Board of Aldermen. That does not mean that there is no disclosure. There's complete disclosure on all these expenses. You see most of the expenses in the budget when it's approved every year, and so this is merely to make the city more efficient and reduce the wait time on purchases that are necessary to keep the city functioning.
And yeah, I'd like to real quick just mention that. And I appreciate mentioning the budgetary process, and clarify some folks. I don't think they necessarily understand that we vote through a budget, and then we obviously we'll see those items again in a little more detail. Mm-hmm. If someone disagrees with an item or two, that's no reason to vote against an entire budget. So, because obviously you'll have an opportunity to address those differences as you need, but. I'll make my remarks brief, and if anyone else got to say anything, you go right ahead. I mean, and you mentioned some of this, Russ, in this presentation, your brief presentation here, but a lot of this is clerical changes that's necessary. And I'd like to say I appreciate you going through in, this fairly new position, obviously, you're, and going through and seeing some things that we need to do change, to update. There's some clerical changes. This also creates a degree of flexibility, but maintains accountability. Maintains accountability to the citizens, and obviously works within the confines of the process of reporting to the Board of Aldermen. And as I was mentioning to Alderman Hunt before the meeting, we were chatting a little bit about this. Some of this is necessary just to the sheer fact of inflation alone. I don't know exactly when these numbers were conceived of. Years ago, and not that I'm asking. I'm not going to do that to y'all. I'm not going to think of random questions that I can get you guys to do homework on. It's unnecessary. No, we don't. I don't play that way. But anyway, being said, yeah, there's a component to do inflation on this. So, my personal view today on this is that something that should be moved on to the entire board to consider. If there's anything they wish to discuss on this, I guess what I'd like to say is I would hope that they would reach out to staff or any member of finance, the finance committee, to get information here before the meeting. I would really appreciate that. So I don't know. I don't know if any of my fellow aldermen are listening, but I'll put the word out on them. So at any rate, Alderwoman Mims.
I want to thank you all because in looking at the updates that you're doing and looking at other places also, this is ethically and to put it in the policy's perspective so that the professionalism, and I'm just going to sit here and speak from right here, what you all are doing, and you're showing your professional skills here, and you're showing what your expertise is. And I appreciate seeing it. I'm not going to sit here and try to micromanage. You give it to us. We sit here as a board, a committee, and we look at it. You break it down to us, so it's very transparent. So as you know, transparency is a piece that I look forward to, so that we can move forward and quit going backwards. Because we take 2 steps forward, we go back 4. And I'm along with the chairman at this. So what do you all need from us on this report? To move it forward?
Well, typically, to move it to the Board of Aldermen and go through the Finance Committee, we would need a motion to move that towards the Board of Aldermen.
Okay, I've got a statement.
Okay, sure. Real quick, we have a motion.
yeah.
Is there a second? Okay, all right. So we'll go with Alderman, I guess, Myers got the second on that. So Alderman Hunt?
Back to what you've done and where you've gone, I think you've done a phenomenal job of improvement and tying things together and covering the little things. Then I look over at Damon and I say, Damon, will you be getting all of the communications from the department heads? And you do that often, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I do. And now I also just want to commend Russell. One of the first things I asked him to do, other than quite a few others, but one of the long-term things was to review our personnel purchasing policy along with our budget policies and see what we could do to be more efficient. And looking at those limits, currently, like we do informal and formal bids. So when I heard that about the informal, I still wanted people to understand we still make 3 calls, even on the informal portion, where we can. One of the things we've done, too, that we do very well, we reiterate to our project managers and others, is when you do bidding or you do something to try to put everything in writing as much as possible so we can track it along. So, and Russ has been really working hard on that. Another thing we did is this year we hired a person that would help out with purchasing overall. She's going to help streamline how we do our purchasing lines, like making sure everybody's bidding the same way, things of that sort. We're going to take baby steps. We'll end up with where we want to be at. So, yes.
So I just wanted to make sure that you were still tied in there.
Yes.
Where you needed to be, because sometimes we don't put that in writing, but we have moved on in this group as someone that is trusting and giving the empowerment to you, Damon, and we don't have to see every move and every payment and every authorization. Thank you for doing your jobs, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to point out that, like I mentioned earlier, there is, the accountability is still, nothing's changed with that in this process. So we still see it, so, I mean, at any rate. Okay, does anyone else have any questions or comments by chance? Okay, we do have a motion on the table by Alderman Mims, second by Alderman Myers, on bringing this item forth to the entire Board of Aldermen. Do we need a date certain by chance? It's just the next meeting date, or is that whenever you guys, next meeting date, is that what you guys wish? So,
Sure.
Okay, we'll go and do that next Board of Aldermen meeting date. So, okay, well, we're going to call the vote here. Alderman Mims?
Oh, aye.
Aye. Okay. Alderman Ryan Myers?
Yes.
Okay. Alderwoman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Frank Hunt?
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. So,
Okay.
motion
Mr. Chairman?
passes. Yes, ma'am.
No, what I want to say to you is I appreciate how you handle this, especially when it comes down in detail, so that we're not looking like we're micromanaging. And the fact that there's a lot of things that keeps coming forward, even after we do our part, tear it down, that's how it's coming back. So I appreciate when you do this and you pass it forward. We've already vetted it.
Yes, and thank you for saying that. And that was a comment made earlier about before, going to the entire board. So it has been looked at, and we aren't trying to micromanage it. That's 100% correct. Don't want to be accused of such, right? So, all right. At any rate, all right. So motion passes.
Okay.
Okay.
There's one other item.
Good item. Budget policy.
Yes. And if you turn over the page from the matrix, on the back of that, there is a summary of what the change is on the budget policy. In the budget policy itself, on the first page on the lower right-hand column, it says budget transfers and amendments. And in the policy that is in effect now, it has dollar limits in there that are not congruent with the purchasing policy. And what I'm recommending is changing this policy to follow the limits that are in the purchasing policy, that it's all in one place and there's no confusion anywhere. It's caused a little bit of back and forth in making sure that you read everything, and if we refer back to the matrix that's in the purchasing policy, it just makes it really clear.
Yeah, that seems, yeah. This is consistent, and Alderwoman Mims make a motion to approve. Can I get a second by chance?
Second.
Okay, we'll go with Alderwoman Van Buskirk. She got you, Frank, sorry. So,
She's quick.
at any rate, any other questions or discussion? All right, we'll call the vote. Alderwoman Van Buskirk, or excuse me, Alderwoman Mims,
Yes.
Alderwoman Van Buskirk,
Yes.
Alderman Ryan Myers,
Yes.
Alderman Frank Hunt.
Yes.
I will vote yes as well, so motion passes.
Okay.
That forth to the Board of Aldermen, next meeting. Anything else on the plate? Doesn't look like it, but
think
give it a
that
shot
does it.
anyway. All right, so Alderwoman Mims has made a motion to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting. Can I get a second? Second by Alderwoman Van Buskirk. We can all just say yay or nay. Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, meeting adjourned at 6:30. Go with that.